Ordinary People by Judith Guest.
Copyright 1976.
Main characters are Conrad, Calvin, and Beth Jarrett,
Jordan, Buck Jarrett, Dr. Berger, and Joe Lazenby,
as well as Janine Pratt. Ordinary People, written by Judith Guest, is a novel that demonstrates Conrad Jarrett's struggle to overcome the death of his brother Buck.
Conrad learns that his feelings towards past tragedies will only worsen if he doesn't learn to communicate effectively.
Conrad's parents, Calvin and Beth, also struggle to overcome Buck's death and Conrad's suicide attempt.
However, Calvin and Beth choose to cope differently, choices that begin to affect their marriage and ultimately their entire family.
Through the guidance of Dr. Berger, Conrad acknowledges the reality of his brother's death and eventually is set free of his guilt and self-inflicted pain.
Mr. Calvin Jarrett, thank you for taking the time to have this interview with me. Hello, thank you for having me here today. Before we get into details about your life, can you please tell me about yourself? Well, I'm your average lawyer, a father to my son Conrad, and husband to Beth Jarrett. My family did have another member named Buck, but unfortunately, we lost him in a boating accident. I try to provide my family a good, healthy living, and I do the best I can do. What problems occur in your household? Well, I personally believe that communication is the maker or breaker in a healthy relationship. Sadly, my wife thinks otherwise. Each of us having different ideas of how we should approach our problems cause too much tension between us. So you and your wife spend time together? Yeah, we usually like to hang around with my colleagues and go to dinner with them. Do the people around you know about the issues in your family? I'm not that close-minded about telling people things, but like I said, my wife doesn't appreciate when I talk to people about our personal problems, including problems about our son. What do you think of Conrad's attitudes towards you and Beth? I personally believe that Conrad doesn't have an attitude issue towards me, but on the other hand, he does with his mother. And I think it's because she never showed him that she cared about him, and having him an attitude towards her made him feel like he was gaining an attention to show her some kind of point. With Conrad, I feel when I communicate with him, I make progress towards giving him a better life. Did you reach out for help during your tragic events in your life, like Conrad did with the therapist? Yeah, I did. Just like Conrad, I visited Dr. Berger. I felt communication is the best thing between a family. Well, some people choose to talk to God and communicate with him, but I just choose to communicate with a therapist. In what ways do you consider yourself successful? I feel I've become closer to my son. For example, my son came home from school one day telling me that he got into a fight. Like any other regular parent, they would have freaked out, jumping to conclusions about their kids. But for me, I felt happy that Conrad opened up to me. He trusted me, and I trusted him. That's what caused a good relationship between me and my son. It all goes back to communication. What part do you take in providing a good life for your son, Calvin? I encouraged my son to see a therapist. I encouraged him to talk about his problems. Most importantly, I made sure he knew it's okay to talk about your problems, and you shouldn't be ashamed of that. Like when he returned from the hospital, for example, the first thing I made sure he did was to see a therapist. I felt like he disagreed for me, but he did it for me. Were there any decisions that your wife made that you disapproved with? Well, there came a time when my wife wanted to go away for the holidays, but I knew Calvin wasn't ready to leave his life that he was trying to fix and just go off on a vacation. I felt it wasn't appropriate at the time. What's the biggest achievement in your life so far? I've become closer to my son, and I'm pretty sure most parents can't say that these days. Not even my wife, unfortunately. She thinks that she causes harm by leaving us, but no, she let me become a better father to my son. I taught my son that communication will lead to a better healthy life and a better relationship. I'm proud of my son despite the tragic events that we encountered in our family. Thank you for your honest opinions. Wish you the best in life. Thank you very much. Hello, Mrs. Jarrett. Thank you for taking the time to sit down and talk with me today. Well, I'm not one to communicate openly about my emotions, but I suppose I could spare a few minutes. Alright, so tell me a little about yourself. Well, I'm Beth Jarrett, mother of Conrad Jarrett and wife to Calvin Jarrett. However, I lost my son Jordan Buck in a boating accident. Well, anyways, let's continue. I'm usually at home, and if not, I enjoy playing golf. I like to go to colleagues' houses for dinners with my husband Calvin, because his connections as being a lawyer are sometimes beneficial in our social surroundings. What issues occurred within your family? My family and I are what I like to consider close, but I feel that Conrad needs to be more appreciative towards me in the home I've given him. Before his suicide attempt, he was always out late. I'm tired of feeling disrespected by not only Conrad, but Calvin as well. They need to put themselves in my shoes for once. Why is there so much tension in your home? Do you think that you could have changed the outcome of certain family matters, such as Buck's death and Conrad's suicide attempt? I know for a fact that I'm a good mother. When Calvin quit the swim team, I was the last to know. How is that supposed to make me feel? My own son does not want to bother to inform me about his life. I'm not going to baby him like his father does. I miss Buck every day, and I believe that my family and I just need to get away from it all. But, of course, my husband disagrees. Why does Calvin oppose taking a vacation? He wants to talk about our family's tragedies, and I'm unwilling to discuss them. I don't think it is necessary. I don't want to dwell on the past. It's time we move forward. Nothing we say will change anything. How have you been handling those tragedies? Have you talked to a professional about it, like maybe a therapist? I can't honestly say. I've been keeping it to myself. My son visits a psychiatrist, but I do not speak to anyone. I don't believe that I should discuss my personal issues with just anyone. I don't need pity from friends, colleagues, or even strangers to believe that God can guide me towards happiness again. I don't have any part of it. What has been the result of your lack of communication? Well, my marriage was falling apart and my husband proposed the idea of counseling. It was then I knew that we could not fix what had been so badly broken. I gave up, I suppose. I felt that my son didn't love me and my husband could not understand me anymore. So I left. If they weren't going to accept my method of handling our problems, it wasn't fair that I had to accept theirs. What catalyzed the destruction of your marriage? My husband and I were visiting the Murrays for a dinner party one night, and the topic of our son came up. I kept quiet, not wanting to discuss our personal matters. I responded with, "He's doing well," when asked. However, Calvin inappropriately blurted out about Conrad's visits to a therapist. He made him seem like he still had problems and didn't even bother to respect his son's privacy. Family matters are family matters, not anyone else's. Do you feel as though Conrad was trying to punish you by committing suicide? When Conrad attempted to commit suicide, I couldn't help but feel as though he was trying to make a point. So I guess I didn't forgive him. I rarely visited him at the hospital. Before the suicide attempt, he came home late. Even after that, he was still coming home late. And I told him that I wouldn't tolerate it. I tried to worry about my son. He would continue to disrespect me. He even told me to go to hell. Why bother anymore? I can't get through to him or Calvin. So why were you not successful in repairing your marriage or the broken pieces of your family? No, I honestly wasn't. I constantly felt as though Calvin and Conrad perceived me as a failure, and I couldn't change their minds. I was hopeless and unsuccessful in their eyes, and I couldn't tolerate it anymore. I needed to move on with my life, in any way I knew how, and that was to leave. I don't have much more to say. I did what I thought was best for us. That is all then. Thank you for your time.
Hi, I'm Jen,
And I'm Conrad.
and I'm going to tell you about my story.
So what?
My parents got a divorce because my mom cheated on my dad, and I started doing drugs, and so my mom moved me to Chicago. I'm a senior. I sing in choir. I have a little brother who I worry about how things are affecting him. My mom's a nurse, and she got the job by my uncle.
I'm a junior in high school. I sing in choir where me and Jen met. I have family problems, and my dad constantly worries about me now that my brother drowned in a boating accident, and my mom holds me responsible for it. I tried to commit suicide by cutting myself with a razor, but they caught me at the last moment, and my mother took it as a personal attack.
Reporting live from the suburbs of Chicago. Coming straight from the headquarters in the middle of a harsh winter, a family does its best to recover from a tragedy. Vicky?
The Jarretts, Beth, Cal, and Conrad, are an extraordinary family trying to survive through the emotional confusion and searching vibes brought on by the recurring tragedies in the family. Michelle?
Calvin is a simple man, a tax attorney, who feels the need to communicate with his wife and constantly be concerned over his son's well-being. Back to you, Vicky.
Conrad, the youngest and only son left of the Jarretts, a junior who's trying to gain emotional control and go back to pleasing his family. Michelle?
And then there's Beth, is a socialite, housewife, and an aversive to emotional contact, communication with her son, whom she feels is guilty for his brother's death. Come on, Vicky, let's go.
The setting is the foundation for the community and surroundings of the characters, which influences the Jarrett's attitudes and emotions throughout the novel.